Dr. Lena Farrow never expected that a normal night shift would change the future of humanity. She was sitting alone inside the deep space listening post called Outpost Helios 9. It was a quiet place built at the very edge of the solar system, far from Earth, far from noise, and far from almost every human being. Only a small team worked there, and most of them were asleep, because signals from space rarely changed. Most nights were slow, and the job felt more like waiting than discovering. But tonight, something unusual happened. A strange signal appeared on her screen. At first, she did not think much about it. Space was full of background noise, radio waves, old satellite signals, static from distant stars. But this signal had a pattern. It started with a short burst, then a long one, then 3 small pulses. It repeated again and again. It acted almost like it was trying to communicate. Lena leaned closer and watched the data scroll across the monitor. Her heartbeat began to rise, not from fear, but from curiosity. She was good at finding patterns, better than most people. That was why she worked there. She copied the signal and ran it through the decoding software. The system tried to separate natural noise from artificial structure. After a few seconds, the computer flashed a message on the screen. Anomaly detected. Her breath caught. She tried a second decoder, one not meant for official protocols, something she and a colleague had built secretly to test unusual signals. The new decoder showed lines of symbol shapes she had never seen. They were too organized to be random, too sharp to be natural, too deliberate to be anything created by nearby human satellites. For a moment, she just stared. She knew what this meant, and she knew it was the moment every astronomer secretly hoped for, yet feared at the same time. Contact, or at least, a sign of someone else out there. She called her teammate, Ben, who was half asleep in the next room. He stumbled in with messy hair and an annoyed look, but when he saw the symbols on the screen, his expression changed instantly. He sat down beside her, suddenly wide awake. "This is not noise," he whispered. They watched the symbols carefully as more arrived through the feed. They tried different decoding techniques. Hours passed. The room felt smaller and smaller as the tension grew. Finally, Ben managed to break part of the structure. They couldn't get every piece, but they could understand enough to see something terrifying. The signal was not random chatter. It was a military transmission, a war council discussion, and it was not coming from anywhere near the solar system. It came from deep space, far beyond anything humans had ever explored. The most disturbing part was the translation. The fragments they decoded described a coming attack. The words were not perfect, but the meaning was clear enough. Human species, unpredictable, dangerous, must be removed before threat level increases. Lena read those lines again and again. Her fingers trembled, and fear crawled slowly up her spine. Ben looked at her with wide eyes. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. They both knew that this wasn't a misunderstanding. Something out there, some alien civilization, was planning humanity's destruction. Not invasion, not communication. Destruction. Lena sent an emergency coded message to Earth. It was the highest level alert the outpost had. Within minutes, the transmission was locked, secured, and sent to the secret branch of Earth's intelligence agencies. They waited in silent fear until their screen flashed with a message from Earth Command: maintain full secrecy. Do not share with base personnel. Continue decoding. Reinforcements en route. The official response confirmed what they already felt in their bones. Earth took it seriously, very seriously. But fear was not the only emotion in the room. There was also disbelief. How could humans be a threat to a species advanced enough to send signals across the galaxy? Humanity was still struggling with wars, climate issues, and basic space travel. Humans were loud, messy, emotional, and chaotic. How could an alien species consider them dangerous enough to wipe out completely? The answer came slowly as Lena and Ben decoded more of the message. The aliens, who called themselves the Krill Dominion, were extremely strategic and calculated. They had been watching Earth for a long time, studying human behavior, reading intercepted broadcasts, observing how quickly humans adapted to challenges. What they feared most was not human weapons. They feared human unpredictability. Humans did things no logic predicted. Humans made sudden leaps in technology. Humans united when pushed into danger. Humans survived things that should have destroyed them many times before. To the Krill, humanity was a threat not because it was strong now, but because it had the potential to become strong later, and they wanted to destroy humans before that happened. That realization hit Lena like a punch in the stomach. The Krill message contained coordinates, fleet movement plans, and time. Some sections were incomplete, but the meaning was unmistakable. The Krill Dominion was gathering forces for an attack and extermination event. And the worst part, they believed humans would never know until the last moment. But they were wrong. Earth knew now, and one small listening post had changed everything. Lena felt the air turn heavy around her. The room felt colder. Her mind raced with images. Cities burning, oceans boiling, people running in panic. She imagined Earth under attack by a species far more powerful than anything humans had ever faced. It terrified her. But at the same time, a strange determination began to grow inside her. She and Ben continued to dig deeper. They translated mentions of giant war fleets, weapons beyond human imagination, and a planned path toward the solar system. One decoded line said, "Destruction of Earth must be completed before human technological curve exceeds limit." It sent chills down both of their spines. Lena stopped typing for a moment. She looked out the small window of the outpost. Stars shined quietly in the distance, looking calm and harmless. But somewhere out there, a civilization was preparing humanity's end. She felt the loneliness of space more intensely than ever before. Suddenly, a silent alarm lit up across the room. A new signal was coming in stronger, clearer, more structured. Lena and Ben hurried to capture it. It was another Krill message. When the computer decoded the first section, Lena gasped. The aliens were discussing the exact timeline to begin the extermination strike. They mentioned final preparations, fleet readiness, a deadline for assembling forces. This was no distant plan. This was already in motion. Lena's hands shook as she forwarded the new data to Earth. This was undeniable proof that the danger was real. There was no time to waste. Earth had to know now. Ben stood up and began pacing. His mind was spinning with fear, but also with questions. Why now? How long had the aliens been watching humanity? What made them choose this moment to attack? He spoke his fears aloud, and Lena listened carefully. They both understood the horrifying logic of the Krill. Humans were changing too fast. They were building faster technology, AI systems, better space defenses, and new scientific breakthroughs. The Krill believed that if they didn't strike soon, it might become too late. The outpost suddenly felt like the most important place in all of human history. Hours passed, and they kept decoding. Their eyes were tired, their fingers numb, but they pushed forward. The weight of responsibility hung over them like a thick cloud. They were the only people awake at the edge of the solar system who knew humanity was facing extinction. At last, a military ship from Earth arrived at Helios. 9 officers stepped out wearing dark uniforms with the symbol of Earth's secret intelligence branch. They took the decoded signals, secured the outpost's systems, and ordered Lena and Ben to come with them. They were escorted to a secure communication room to speak directly with Earth's global defense director. The director's face appeared on a large screen. He looked serious, tense, and focused. He asked them to explain everything they had discovered. Lena spoke clearly, even though her voice trembled. She described the patterns, the decoding process, and the horrifying meaning behind the messages. Ben added more details about the alien plans, the war fleets, and the timeline for the attack. The director listened carefully. He didn't interrupt. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. When they finished, he took a deep breath and said something that made the entire room fall silent. "You have just discovered the greatest threat in human history." For a moment, no one moved. The words hit Lena harder than she expected. She felt a chill run down her spine. The director continued, "From this moment, everything you found becomes classified at the highest level. Earth is now preparing for an emergency response. Any mistake, any leak of information, could cause panic across the world. You two will be transferred to Project Aegis immediately." Lena felt her knees weaken. Project Aegis. She had heard rumors of it, a secret coalition of world governments preparing for unknown dangers. She never thought she would be part of it. The director ended the call with a final sentence that Lena would remember forever. "We may be facing extinction, but we will not fall without a fight." Those words stayed in her mind as she and Ben boarded the military transport ship. They looked out the window one last time at the quiet stars. Nothing out there looked dangerous, but they knew better now. Somewhere in the vast darkness, a powerful alien dominion was planning to erase humanity like wiping dust from a surface. But Earth was no longer blind. The truth was out, and the first spark of resistance had been lit. Lena sat back in her seat, exhausted but determined. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know how humanity would fight a cosmic enemy. But she knew one thing for certain. The universe had just changed forever, and the battle for survival had already begun. The news of the alien threat spread through the highest levels of Earth's governments like a silent earthquake. Only the most powerful leaders, generals, and scientific directors knew what was happening, and even they struggled to believe it. A species called the Krill Dominion was preparing to destroy humanity. Not conquer, not communicate, destroy. And the worst part was that Earth had very little time. World leaders were summoned to a secret emergency meeting under a code name that only a handful of people on the planet had heard before. Project Aegis. It was a hidden global defense initiative created long ago for unknown cosmic threats, but no one ever expected it to be used. Now it was the only hope Earth had. The meeting took place in an underground facility buried so deep beneath the mountains that no satellite could detect it. The long metallic room was filled with screens showing maps, star charts, decoded alien messages, and estimates of possible attack timelines. Nervous energy filled the space. Presidents, prime ministers, military commanders, and scientific experts sat together, some of them political rivals who had never agreed on anything before. But now they all shared one thing: fear. The director of global defense stood at the center, projecting the decoded Krill message for everyone to see. As the alien symbols and translated text appeared on the screen, the room grew quiet. Even the most powerful people looked small in front of the truth. The alien message clearly stated that humanity was a growing threat and had to be eliminated before it advanced too far. No one in the room took this lightly. For a few moments, there was complete silence. Everyone understood the same thing. They were facing extinction. The director finally broke the silence. He explained that Earth had only one advantage: early knowledge. The Krill believed humans were unaware. That ignorance was gone now. The director looked at each leader and said, "If we fight separately, we will lose. If we fight together, we may survive." It was not easy for world leaders to trust one another. Some of them had spent years arguing, competing, or even threatening each other. But now they faced an enemy far bigger than politics. Slowly, one by one, they agreed to cooperate fully. Their signatures marked the beginning of a new global alliance. Project Aegis was activated at full power. In the following weeks, something happened that humanity had never seen before. The borders that once divided nations now opened for shared purpose. Rival countries exchanged classified technology. Intelligence agencies revealed secrets they had kept hidden for decades. Scientists from every corner of the world worked side by side in underground labs, sharing theories, tools, and inventions. For the first time in human history, the entire planet was united for a single mission: survival. Dr. Lena Farrow and her partner, Ben, were brought to the Project Aegis headquarters. They were still in shock from discovering the alien messages, but they quickly realized they were no longer just observers. They were now part of the core team trying to save Earth. Their knowledge of the Krill signal patterns was invaluable. Inside the Aegis facility, hundreds of scientists worked on advanced technology, anything that could give humanity even the smallest advantage. Some worked on new propulsion systems, others on plasma shields, while others studied fragments of mysterious objects found in past space missions. These fragments had been kept secret for years because no one knew what they were. Now, with the Krill threat revealed, those fragments were suddenly extremely important. Researchers believed they were pieces of old alien probes or ancient ships that had entered the solar system long before humans were ready to understand them. Every lab buzzed with activity. Engineers stayed awake for days, fueled by determination and fear. Soldiers trained in new tactics, practicing zero-gravity combat and rapid ship infiltration drills. Pilots learned how to use experimental spacecraft that had never been tested outside simulations. Human creativity was pushed to its absolute limit. Meanwhile, intelligence experts analyzed the Krill communication again and again, trying to uncover any detail that could save humanity. They learned about Krill battle patterns, fleet formation strategies, and the hierarchical structure of their command. It was clear that the Krill operated with cold logic and strict coordination. They were predictable, but incredibly powerful. Humans, on the other hand, were unpredictable but lacked the technology to match the Krill. This imbalance frightened everyone, but it also inspired them. Humans had always done their best work when the odds were against them. Months passed, and Project Aegis advanced faster than any program in human history. The best minds collaborated to design Earth's first advanced warfleet. The ships were small compared to what alien civilizations might build, but they were packed with new hybrid technology, human engineering mixed with alien energy principles taken from old unidentified debris. These ships had stronger armor, faster engines, and new weapons that no ordinary military had ever tested. As the fleet took shape, Earth's governments kept the public unaware. They knew that revealing the truth would cause global panic, chaos, and possibly collapse. Instead, they allowed normal life to continue while secretly preparing for a possible end-of-the-world scenario. In training facilities hidden around the globe, special teams prepared for a mission that would later be known as Operation Dawnfire. These soldiers, pilots, engineers, and strategists were chosen from the best of the best. Some came from elite military groups, others from scientific backgrounds. They were united by courage and a willingness to risk their lives for the planet. Commander Elias Reyes, a decorated pilot known for his bold decisions and sharp instincts, was chosen to lead the operation. He had a reputation for thinking differently, breaking rules if necessary, and surviving situations where no one else could. The kind of unpredictability the Krill feared most. When he first heard about the alien threat, he didn't believe it. But once he saw the decoded messages and the fleet blueprints, he realized Earth had no choice. He accepted the mission without hesitation. He knew that if humanity waited for the Krill to strike, it would be too late. They had to act first, even if the odds were impossible. Project Aegis was not only about building weapons, it was also about understanding human psychology. Leaders and researchers studied how humanity behaved during danger, stress, and fear. They knew one thing for certain. When humans felt cornered, they didn't surrender, they fought with everything they had. This was their biggest strength, something the Krill did not understand. Behind the scenes, diplomats worked to maintain stability between nations. They reassured governments, prevented conflicts, and kept the massive project hidden from the public. If people started to panic, the preparation would fail. The world had to stay calm while its leaders quietly prepared for war. Meanwhile, Lena and Ben worked on improving signal decoding. They discovered that the Krill used a central command relay to coordinate their fleets across vast distances. If that relay could be destroyed, the alien invasion would fall into chaos. But the relay was deep inside Krill-controlled space. Reaching it would require an experimental FTL jump faster than anything humans had ever tried. This discovery became the heart of Operation Dawnfire. The plan was risky, almost suicidal, but it offered humanity a chance. The operation would send a small, agile fleet to strike the Krill relay before the aliens reached Earth. If successful, it would delay or possibly stop the invasion. If it failed, humanity would be defenseless. Every day closer to the Krill invasion deadline brought more urgency. The atmosphere inside Project Aegis shifted from fear to fierce determination. Soldiers trained harder, engineers worked faster, scientists took fewer breaks. It felt like the whole planet was holding its breath. One night, Lena walked through the observation deck of the facility. Large glass windows revealed the test hangars where Earth's first hybrid warships were being assembled. She watched the glowing engines, the smooth armored panels, and the workers moving like ants around the giant machines. She remembered the moment she first saw the alien signal, the moment everything changed. Now, looking at humanity's desperate preparations, she felt a mix of pride and fear. Pride in what humans could achieve when united, to fear of what would happen if all this still wasn't enough. Ben joined her and said quietly, "Do you ever think about what happens if this doesn't work?" She didn't answer right away. She imagined the Krill ships entering the sky, cities burning, oceans boiling, and billions of lives disappearing. Then she shook her head. "We can't think that way. We have to believe we can fight back." Ben nodded. He understood. If humans didn't believe in their own strength, no one else would. As Operation Dawnfire approached final approval, Commander Reyes gathered his team in a secure room. He looked at each member: pilots, engineers, scientists, tactical experts. He told them the truth plainly. "We are not fighting for glory. We are not fighting for countries. We are fighting for every person on this planet, even those who will never know what we did here. If we fail, Earth dies. If we succeed, humanity survives." His words carried weight, and everyone in the room felt it. The mission was far bigger than any of them individually. The preparations continued night and day. The fleet was completed. The FTL engines were tested. The weapons were installed. The strike teams were trained. Everything moved toward one moment. Humanity was no longer waiting for destruction. It was preparing to strike first and deep in the darkness of space. The Krill Dominion had no idea that the primitive species they planned to destroy was assembling something the galaxy had never seen. United Earth ready to fight for its survival. If we succeed, humanity survives. His words carried weight, and everyone in the room felt it. The mission was far bigger than any of them individually. The preparations continued night and day. The fleet was completed. The FTL engines were tested. The weapons were installed. The strike teams were trained. Everything moved toward one moment. Humanity was no longer waiting for destruction. It was preparing to strike first and deep in the darkness of space. The Krill Dominion had no idea that the primitive species they planned to destroy was assembling something the galaxy had never seen. United Earth ready to fight for its survival. The day of Operation Dawnfire arrived like a quiet storm. No one on Earth could feel it, because the mission was completely secret, hidden from the world. While ordinary people woke up, made breakfast, went to work, and lived their normal lives, deep underground, a fleet of human-made warships prepared to leave the solar system for the first time in human history. The people who would fly these ships had trained for months, carrying the heavy knowledge that the fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. Commander Elias Reyes stood in front of the largest hangar, watching engineers finish their last checks on the ships. They were sleek, dark, and shaped like arrows built to pierce through space. Their engines glowed faintly blue with hybrid technology that did not exist a year earlier. Reyes felt a strange mix of fear and pride. He had flown many aircraft in his life, but none of them were like these. These ships were a message to the Krill Dominion. Humans were not going to die quietly. Inside the briefing room, the air was thick with tension. Screens showed maps of Krill territory, predicted fleet movements, and the location of the alien command relayed the heart of the Krill invasion network. Destroying that relay was the main goal of Operation Dawnfire. Without it, the Krill fleets would become scattered, confused, and unable to coordinate their attack on Earth. But reaching it meant traveling deep into enemy space, far beyond where humans had ever gone. The mission began with something humanity had never tested in real combat: the experimental FTL jump. The scientists who designed it were confident it would work, but confidence didn't erase the danger. If anything went wrong, the fleet could tear apart, vanish, or never arrive at all. Reyes stepped forward and faced his team. He looked at each person: pilots, engineers, technicians, combat specialists. Every one of them had volunteered, knowing the risks. Reyes spoke calmly, but the seriousness in his voice echoed through the room. This is not a rescue mission. This is not a scouting run. This is humanity's first strike against an enemy that already decided to erase us. We are going into their territory. not to start a war, but to stop one. We might not all return, but what we do today will decide if Earth has a tomorrow. No one moved. Some swallowed hard, some clenched their fists, but no one backed down. The fleet launched with silent engines to avoid detection. As the ships left the solar system, the stars stretched like long white lines. The first stage went smoothly. Then came the moment everyone feared. The FTL cores activated. A bright flash filled the cockpit windows. The ships shook violently. Everything blurred. And then, suddenly, the shaking stopped. They had jumped. Reyes looked out through the glass. What he saw made his breath catch. They were no longer near Earth. Instead, they floated in a strange, distant region of space filled with bright blue nebula dust that curled like smoke. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The jump had worked. Humanity had officially stepped into alien territory. The sensors lit up almost immediately. That Krill Dominion had patrols, drones, and automated mines scattered across their regions like guardians watching the sky. Reyes ordered the fleet into stealth mode. The ships dimmed their lights and reduced their energy signatures until they were nearly invisible. The first obstacle was a Krill minefield. These weren't ordinary mines. They floated silently and glowed faintly with alien energy, sensing movement like living creatures. Reyes guided the fleet slowly, carefully, weaving through patterns that only appeared random. The pilots held their breath with each maneuver. One wrong move, one tiny mistake, and the mines would explode, alerting the Krill to their presence. At one point, a ship drifted slightly off course. A mine pulsed red. Beeping filled the ship as alarms flashed. Reyes ordered the pilot to freeze. For 10 long seconds, the mine scanned. The pilot's heart pounded so loudly he thought everyone could hear. Then, slowly, the mine dimmed and returned to its neutral glow. The fleet moved on, silent and shaken. The next threat came from Krill stealth drones, small, sharp machines designed to hunt intruders. They moved like insects and scanned with blue waves of light. The human ships hid behind asteroid fragments, drifting slowly until the drones passed. It felt like hiding from predators in a dark forest. Everyone in the fleet knew that if even one drone detected them, the Krill would send an entire fleet in response. After hours of careful movement, the human fleet finally reached their destination, the Krill command relay. It was enormous. A massive circular structure floated in space, glowing with alien power. It looked like a giant ring made of metal and living tissue combined. Energy pulsed through it like a heartbeat. This relay controlled the entire Krill war network. Without it, the attack on Earth would collapse. Reyes stared at it through the viewport, feeling a mix of awe and fear. This was the core of the enemy's strength. Destroying it might save Earth. Failing to do so would doom humanity. The plan was to use Earth's newest weapon, a planet-cracking EMP lance. It wasn't truly capable of cracking planets, but it could release enough energy to collapse the relay's internal systems. The problem was that the lance needed to be close, dangerously close to work. Reyes ordered the fleet into attack formation. The pilots responded instantly, their hands steady despite the fear in their chests. As they moved closer, the relay's defense systems activated. Beams of energy shot across space. Alien turrets came alive. The quiet darkness transformed into a battlefield in seconds. The human ships dodged and rolled, firing back with plasma bursts and magnetic torpedoes. Their hybrid engines let them move unpredictably, something the Krill defense algorithms struggled to track. Reyes used sharp, unexpected maneuvers, just the kind of human behavior the Krill hated and feared. As the battle raged, Reyes saw an opening. EMP Lance team, move in now, he shouted. A smaller ship carrying the lance flew forward, weaving through enemy fire. The relay glowed brighter, preparing its own attack. Turrets turned. Alien energy built up. The small human ship was seconds away from being destroyed. Reyes pushed his ship forward without thinking. His instincts took control. He fired at the turrets, drawing their aim toward him. His ship shook violently as it took hits. Sparks flew from the control panel. His co-pilot yelled his name. But Reyes didn't stop. He kept firing, forcing the turrets to turn away from the lance ship. The lance ship reached the ideal distance. The pilot activated the weapon. A massive shockwave of blue-white energy burst forward, slamming into the relay. The entire structure trembled. Lights flickered. Alien energy lines began to crack like shattered glass. The area around it warped as the EMP overloaded its systems. The Krill defenders reacted instantly. Ships appeared from nearby outposts, rushing to attack. The human fleet prepared for the second phase of the mission's survival. But before that, something unexpected happened. As the relay overloaded, it released a strange echoing sound through space. It wasn't a sound humans could hear normally, but sensors translated it into vibrations. It was almost like a scream, a warning, a desperate call to the Krill fleet. Reyes felt a chill. They know, he said quietly. They know we're here. The relay began to collapse in on itself, its rings bending and breaking under the EMP's force. Energy exploded outward in a blinding flash. Human pilots shielded their eyes. The sky filled with glowing debris. The command relay, the heart of the Krill invasion, was dying. But the mission wasn't over. Destroying the relay had awakened the Krill forces. Their ships appeared from hyperspace, dozens at first, then hundreds, forming a massive wall of dark, living metal. Their blue lights glowed like angry eyes. The air in the human ships grew tense. Reyes inhaled slowly. His team waited for his command, fear visible but controlled. "We've come this far," he said. "We finished the mission." The human fleet pushed forward. Plasma fire lit the sky. The Krill ships attacked with perfect formation, but the humans fought back with unpredictable tactics, sharp turns, random fire patterns, reckless moves. The Krill didn't understand them, and that confusion kept the humans alive. The battle turned into chaos, beautiful, deadly chaos. Explosions lit the darkness. Ships spiraled through wreckage. Energy beams crossed in every direction. Reyes flew like a man possessed, using instinct more than training. Behind him, the relay cracked completely. A massive rupture opened in its center, sucking debris into a swirling vortex of collapsing energy. The Krill fleet scattered to avoid being pulled in. Reyes saw the opening retreat. He shouted, "Everyone, fall back to jump coordinates." The fleet turned and escaped through the chaos, leaving the burning ruins of the relay behind them. When they reached the jump point, the FTL engines activated. One by one, the ships vanished into light dot as the final flash faded. The Krill Dominion was left staring at the impossible. Humans, primitive, unpredictable, emotional humans, had struck first. And now, the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy had gone silent. Every star system near the border of the Obsidian Dominion had stopped sending signals. No distress calls, no trade updates, not even background radio noise. It was as if entire worlds had been erased from existence. The Galactic Council tried to hide the panic, but everyone from small colonies to large empires could feel fear creeping into their bones. Something was moving in the dark, but the humans already knew who it was. They had heard the same silence. Once before, many generations ago, when the Obsidians destroyed the first human colony ships, that old memory lived inside humanity like a scar, and now that same feeling began to return. Earth did not wait for the enemy to strike. They moved fast, and they moved together. The solar fleet, which only a few years ago was small and scattered, now felt like a storm gathering strength. Starships lined up above Earth in perfect formation, stretching across orbit, reflecting sunlight like a sea of steel and fire. Even civilian ships were being converted into carriers and transports. Factories worked day and night, building drones, weapons, armored suits, anything that could help them survive the coming attack. Marcus Hale stood at the center of the command hall of the Titan-class flagship Resolute. The room hummed with energy, voices layered over one another, lights blinking on giant screens. He had seen battles before, but never something like this. He was no longer just a crew captain. He was now a strategist responsible for millions of lives. His face was calm, but inside he felt a weight that pressed down on him like a mountain. He knew humanity had stepped into a storm that would change everything. General Kira Vance walked beside him, her voice steady and sharp as she reviewed reports. She had spent her entire career preparing humanity for a crisis no one believed would come. Now it was here. She had no room for doubt. She reminded Marcus that the Obsidians did not care about negotiations or mercy. They wanted domination. They wanted silence. They wanted an empty galaxy where only they ruled. Earth's satellites had detected strange energy patterns appearing in distant sectors. They looked like ripples in space, as if the fabric of the universe was cracking open. The scientists said these were obsidian jump fractures, mass openings that could bring entire armadas through at once. No other species had technology that could tear holes in space this way. The realization sent a shock through everyone. If those fractures reached human territory, entire cities could vanish in minutes. Marcus and Kira studied the data again and again, searching for patterns, while the fleet prepared for a preemptive strike. Some officers wanted to wait and defend Earth. Others argued that waiting meant death, because the Obsidians would overwhelm them with numbers. Kira believed the only chance of survival was to hit the enemy before their full forces arrived. She knew the plan was risky. She knew that many ships might never return. But she also knew that the future of the entire human race depended on decisive action. Earth sent scouts ahead, stealth drones able to travel without creating any detectable signal. They moved through space like ghosts, slipping past asteroids and dead planets. What they saw terrified everyone on the Resolute. They found Obsidian shipyards operating within the shadows of collapsed stars, building weapons unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Colossal war machines stretched across space like dark fortresses, ships that looked alive, as if made from metal and shadow fused together. The drones recorded everything and transmitted the data back home. The Council trembled when the footage played. Some species begged for peace negotiations. Others believed fleeing was the only hope, but humans didn't bow. Marcus watched the recording and felt his resolve turn into iron. Kira looked at him and nodded. Earth had no choice. If they didn't strike now, the galaxy would fall one system at a time until there was nothing left. Preparations for the first strike began immediately. Thousands of pilots boarded fighters. Engineers checked every circuit and weapon core. Drones were loaded into launch tubes. The Resolute's engines glowed brighter as its power surged to full capacity. Across the entire fleet, people felt both fear and pride. They were about to face an enemy far more advanced, far more brutal, and far more confident than any they had ever seen. But they also knew that humans were not easily destroyed. Marcus walked the ship one last time before departure, speaking with the crew. Some were young and afraid. Some were veterans ready for battle. He offered them reassurance even when his own heart felt heavy. Every person he spoke to reminded him why they fought not for victory, but for survival, for family, for Earth. When the announcement finally came that the fleet was ready, the entire command hall shifted into battle mode. Kira stood before the holographic map and issued final orders. The first target was an obsidian relay station hidden in a dead zone of space. Destroying it would cripple the enemy's ability to coordinate their ships. Without it, the Obsidians would struggle to move their fleets with precision. It was the kind of blow that could give the galaxy a chance to breathe. The fleet launched. Thousands of engines ignited at once, lighting up the darkness like a second sunrise. Ships stretched into long silver lines as they entered the jump corridor. Marcus felt the strange sensation of space folding around them. In a moment, stars blurred, time twisted, and then everything snapped back into focus. They had arrived near the enemy sector. The area was quiet to quiet. No patrols, no signals, no movement. The relay station hung there like a giant black spear, silent and cold. It looked abandoned, but Kira warned that the Obsidians were masters of deception. They could hide entire fleets behind cloaking fields or bury weapons inside asteroids. Marcus ordered drones to sweep the area. The drones moved quickly, scanning every object, every dust cloud, every shadow. For several minutes, everything seemed normal. And then one drone caught something unusual, a faint pulse, like a heartbeat coming from the station. Kira recognized it instantly and her voice tightened. It wasn't a heartbeat, it was a charging signature. The relay station was not a communication hub, it was a weapon. Marcus shouted for the fleet to spread out just as the structure began to glow. Black energy veins crawled across its surface, building toward a massive release. The Resolute's alarms blared. Pilots launched countermeasures. But the energy wave exploded outward faster than light, ripping through the void, tearing apart drones and shaking the largest ships. What humans were prepared. They had brought shield generators taken from ancient ruins on Mars, technology they barely understood but desperately needed. The generators activated and shielded the key ships from total destruction. The wave passed. Damage was heavy, but the fleet was still alive. The relay station began to open like a flower unfolding. Inside, giant weapon cores hummed with power. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a gateway. A massive rift began to form in space, swirling like a storm. Through it, the first Obsidian warship emerged, its hull covered in living shadows, then another, and another. Marcus stared in horror as the enemy fleet poured through the rift like a flood of darkness. Kira slammed her fist on the console and gave the order to fire. Human cannons lit up the void, missiles streaking toward the relay station. Fighters dove into battle, dodging beams of black energy as they shot at enemy ships. The battle was chaos. Human ships exploded in bright flashes. Obsidian wings sliced through fighters. The void shook with thunder. Marcus issued command after command, holding the fleet together even as more enemy ships emerged from the growing rift. Earth had planned a strike, but the Obsidians had planned a trap. The relay station was designed to lure them. Now the humans were facing a full Obsidian assault in a region far from home. The galaxy watched from afar, helpless and terrified. If Earth fell here, nothing would stop the Obsidians from destroying every world afterward. And yet, in the heart of the storm, the humans kept fighting. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and overwhelmed, but they were not defeated. Marcus saw one chance, a desperate, nearly impossible idea. If they could overload the relay station's power core, the gateway would collapse. It would trap the enemy fleet on one side and stop reinforcements. The explosion might consume the Resolute, but it could also save billions of lives. Kira understood immediately. She ordered the targeting systems to lock onto the core. The fleet focused all remaining firepower on the station. Enemy ships swarmed them, trying to protect the gateway. Explosions lit up the darkness like a burning storm. The core began to crack. Energy surged. The relay station screamed with power. Marcus gave the final order. The fleet fired everything. And the core detonated. A blinding flash swallowed the rift. Obsidian ships were torn apart in an instant. The gateway collapsed like shattered glass. For a moment, space itself seemed to scream, then silence. The relay station was gone. So were countless human ships. But the enemy advance had been stopped, at least for now. Marcus breathed hard, gripping the console. Kira steadied herself beside him, her eyes burning with determination. They both knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The Obsidians would come again, and next time, they would not be caught by surprise. Humanity had struck first. Now the galaxy waited to see what would happen when the Obsidians struck back. The blast that destroyed the Obsidian relay station echoed through space like a silent thunderstorm. Light faded. Debris drifted. The battlefield slowly became still again. But inside the Resolute, no one felt calm. Everyone stood frozen at their screens, breathing hard, staring at the place where the rift had been. They had survived something impossible, yet no one celebrated. They all understood that the Obsidians would never forgive what happened here. Humans had blocked their first wave, but it was only a delay, not a victory. Marcus Hale stood in the command hall with sweat on his forehead and exhaustion deep in his bones. His ears still rang from the alarms. He could feel the vibration of damaged engines through the floor. His crew waited for him to speak, but he needed a moment to steady himself. The cost of that battle was heavy. The entire squadrons were gone. Ships that had left Earth full of hope were now scattered as glowing dust across the void. He forced himself to breathe slowly. If he broke now, the morale of the fleet would break with him. General Kira Vance slowly walked to his side, her armor scratched and her voice hoarse from shouting orders. She sent damage report commands to officers, then glanced at Marcus. Her eyes were calm, but behind them he saw the same fear that he carried. Yet she didn't let it control her. She stood firm, as if her posture alone could hold the fleet together. The surviving ships regrouped in a defensive circle. Engineers rushed to repair damaged hulls. Medics moved desperately inside the medical bays trying to save the wounded. Families back on Earth waited for news, not knowing if their sons, daughters, or parents were still alive. Every second felt like it carried the weight of a lifetime. Kira finally broke the silence and said that the Obsidians would retaliate soon. They had lost a gateway, but they had not lost their desire for destruction. In fact, they would be angry now. Humans had embarrassed them in front of the galaxy. They had stopped their perfect plan, and the Obsidians were not a species that accepted humiliation. Marcus understood this clearly. The next attack would not be a trap. It would be direct, brutal, and meant to crush humanity completely. The Council sent a transmission to the Resolute, demanding a full report. They were terrified. Some species even suggested surrendering before the Obsidians arrived, hoping mercy would save them. Others blamed humans for provoking the enemy. But Kira refused to be intimidated. She told Marcus they could not rely on anyone else. Humanity had triggered the next phase of this war, and humanity had to be ready for it. Back on Earth, the news spread across every screen and every broadcasting tower. People cried for the fallen. Others clenched their fists with pride, knowing their fleet had done something no species had dared to try. The world united in a way that had not happened in centuries. Nations that once argued now shared resources. Scientists who disliked each other now worked side by side. Humanity began preparing for the defense of their planet with a force greater than any army Earth had ever seen. Massive planetary shields were activated. Orbital cannons were built around the moon. Spaceports stopped accepting civilian travel and turned into command centers. Every remaining ship capable of flight was upgraded, armed, or restructured for war. Humanity knew the Obsidians would not target small colonies next. They would strike Earth itself. They wanted to destroy the heart of those who dared resist. Marcus and Kira needed to return home, but they knew returning too soon might attract the enemy to Earth before preparations were complete. So they made a difficult choice. The damaged fleet would take a long, hidden route back, staying behind asteroid belts and radio shadows to avoid detection. It added weeks to the journey, but it gave Earth precious time. During the long return, Marcus struggled to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of destruction, faces of pilots who would never come home, and the terrifying moment when the obsidian rift had torn open. He blamed himself for every ship lost. Kira saw his guilt growing heavier every day, and she reminded him that without his decisions, the entire galaxy might have fallen already. But guilt is a stubborn companion. It stayed with him even when he tried to push it away. Meanwhile, the soldiers aboard the fleet spoke quietly at night, telling stories of home. Some talked about the families they missed. Others described the Earth's sunsets they wanted to see again. These conversations made the cold hallways feel warmer. They reminded everyone what they were fighting for. When the Resolute finally entered the solar system, Earth glowed ahead like a blue jewel wrapped in protective halos of light. New defense towers rose from the oceans. Armored satellites hovered in formation. The planet looked ready, but fear still hung in the air. Marcus felt hope and dread mixing in his chest. This was home, but it was also a target. The day after the fleet returned, sensors caught something unusual. There was a distortion at the far edge of the system, a tremor in space, like the first ripple before a storm. Kira ordered a full scan, and when the results appeared, the command hall froze. A massive obsidian fleet was entering the system, far larger than the one at the relay station, far stronger, far more prepared. They were coming for revenge. Earth's defense protocols activated instantly. Every orbital cannon turned toward the incoming threat. Fighters launched from hidden hangars below the oceans. Civilian shelters closed. The skies over cities darkened as shield fields shimmered to life. Humanity stood together, ready to face the darkness. Marcus watched the enemy formation form on the holoscreen. Obsidian ships glided forward like giant predators. Their hulls reflected no light. Their engines emitted no flame. They looked like living shadows, crossing space with silent hunger. It was the largest invasion force humanity had ever witnessed. For a moment, it felt like the entire solar system held its breath. Kira took command of the defense network. Her voice cut through the tension like a blade. She assigned Marcus to lead the frontline fighters. He was the only one capable of holding the enemy at the outer perimeter long enough for Earth's cannons to charge fully. Marcus agreed, even though he knew it meant risking everything. He suited up, boarded his starfighter, and prepared to launch. The battle began with a shockwave. Obsidian warships fired beams of black energy that cut through asteroids and satellites. Human ships returned fire in blazing streaks of light. Explosions blossomed across the darkness like fiery flowers. The void shook with thunder as ships collided and broke apart. Marcus led his squadron into the heart of the enemy formation. His fighter danced between blasts, engines burning bright. He saw pilots fall one by one, their voices fading from the comm channels. But he pushed forward, targeting the Obsidian Command Destroyer. If he could damage it, the enemy fleet would lose its coordination. On Earth, Kira directed thousands of weapon stations at once. She watched the battle like a grand chess match, moving fleets, protecting weak points, predicting Obsidian tactics. The Obsidians fought like machines, cold, perfect, merciless. But humans fought with emotion, instinct, and desperation that made them unpredictable. As the hours passed, the battle grew more violent. Earth's shields flickered, cities trembled. The moon's defense line began to collapse. Humanity was losing ground. The enemy destroyer Marcus targeted was barely scratched. The Obsidians were simply too strong. But humans have a strange quality that the Obsidians never understood. When humans are cornered, they become even more dangerous. Marcus saw a momentary gap in the enemy formation, small and unstable. It was risky. It was almost suicidal. But it was the only way. He pushed his fighter to maximum power and dove straight toward the command destroyer's weakest point. Enemy beams grazed his wings. His alarms screamed. His cockpit shook violently. But he didn't stop. He fired a full barrage of missiles directly into the destroyer's exposed vent. The explosion was massive, brighter than anything around it. The destroyer cracked open, its shadow-like armor ripping apart. For the first time in the entire war, an Obsidian command ship fell. The enemy fleet hesitated. Their formation broke for a split second. That was all Earth needed. Kira activated the planet's primary super. A colossal beam of pure white light erupted from Earth's orbit, firing straight through the scattered Obsidian line. Ships vaporized instantly. The beam carved a burning path through the invaders, and the galaxy felt the shock. The Obsidians finally retreated, something they had never done before. Their remaining ships turned and vanished into deep space, leaving behind smoking wrecks and broken silence. Marcus's fighter barely returned. His ship was damaged, his oxygen low, but he made it back to the Resolute. Kira met him with relief mixed with exhaustion. Humanity had survived the greatest attempt at extinction in its history. The war was not over. The Obsidians were wounded, not defeated. But something had changed forever. The galaxy now knew that humans were not prey. They were survivors. They were fighters. They were the spark that refused to die. And because of them, the galaxy still had hope.